I was holding my dying mother's hand when she whispered the truth that shattered my world. Grace, she's not your sister. She's your real mother. My hands started shaking. The hospital room felt like it was spinning around me. What did she just say? But wait. Before I tell you how I found out the most shocking secret of my life, let me tell you something that will make your heart race. The woman who raised me, who I called Mama for 23 years, had been slowly killing my real mother right in front of my eyes. And I helped her do it. You're probably thinking, this sounds crazy. Trust me, I thought so too. But by the end of this story, you'll understand how evil can hide behind the sweetest smile, and how love can blind us to the most terrible truths. My name is Joy, and this is the story of how I discovered that everything I knew about my family was a lie. It all started 3 months ago in Lagos. I was living in a small apartment in Ikeja with the woman I had always called my mother, Mama Rose. She was 55 years old, with kind eyes and the softest voice you ever heard. Everyone in our neighborhood loved her. She helped sick people, gave food to hungry children, and never said a bad word about anyone. Or so I thought. We also lived with Grace, who I believed was my older sister. Grace was 28, just 5 years older than me. She worked as a nurse at a private hospital in Victoria Island. Grace was beautiful, tall, and smart. But there was something about her eyes that always made me feel cold inside. They never looked warm, even when she smiled. Mama Rose had told me the same story my whole life. Your father died when you were 2 years old. Grace's father left before she was born. We are all we have, so we must stick together. I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. But then Grace started getting sick. It began small. She would feel tired after work. Then she started having bad headaches. Soon she couldn't keep food down. Her beautiful dark skin started looking grey and thin. It's just stress from work, Mama Rose would say, stirring a cup of hot tea. Drink this, my dear. It will make you feel better. Grace would drink it every time. And every time she got worse. I suggested we take her to the hospital, but Mama Rose always had a reason why we shouldn't. Hospitals are too expensive. She just needs rest. I know what's best for her. I've been taking care of sick people longer than you've been alive. I trusted her. Mama Rose had always taken care of us. When I was sick as a child, her special teas and soups always made me better. When Grace was younger and got hurt playing, Mama Rose's hands seemed to have magic healing powers. But this time was different. Grace was getting sicker and sicker. One evening, I came home from my job at a small shop in the market. Grace was lying on the couch, looking so weak she could barely lift her head. "Grace, you look terrible," I said, sitting next to her. "Please, let me take you to the hospital." She opened her mouth to speak, but Mama Rose came into the room carrying a steaming cup. "Here, my dear," Mama Rose said in her sweet voice, "drink this. It's a special tea that will help your stomach." I watched Grace's face. For just a second, I saw something in her eyes. Was it fear? But then it was gone, and she took the cup with shaking hands. "Thank you, Mama," Grace whispered. As she drank, I noticed Mama Rose watching her very carefully, too carefully, like she was waiting for something to happen. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I kept thinking about the look in Grace's eyes when Mama Rose brought her the tea. The next morning, Grace was so sick she couldn't get out of bed. Her skin looked yellow, and she kept throwing up. This time, I didn't ask for permission. "Mama, I'm taking Grace to the hospital right now," I said, putting on my shoes. Mama Rosa's face changed for just a moment. Her kind eyes flashed with something that scared me, but then her sweet smile came back. "If you think that's best, my dear," she said, "but let me make her one more cup of tea for the road. It will help her stomach during the car ride." I should have said no. I should have grabbed Grace and run out the door, but I didn't. I trusted the woman who raised me. Grace drank the tea, and within minutes, she started having trouble breathing. "Something's wrong!" I screamed as Grace's body started shaking. "Call an ambulance!" But Mama Rose just stood there, watching, not moving, not calling for help, just watching Grace fight for her life with a strange look on her face. I grabbed my phone and called for help myself. The ambulance came fast, but Grace was unconscious by the time they arrived. At the hospital, the doctors worked on Grace for hours. I sat in the waiting room, crying and praying. Mama Rose sat next to me, holding my hand and saying comforting words. But her hand felt cold and her words felt empty. Finally, a doctor came out. "She's stable now," he said. "But we need to run some tests. Her symptoms are very unusual." "What do you mean?" I asked. The doctor looked at both me and Mama Rose carefully before speaking. "We found some strange things in her blood. We need to know what she's been eating and drinking lately." My heart started beating fast. "She's been drinking special teas that my mother makes for her sickness." "What kind of teas?" the doctor asked. I looked at Mama Rose. Her face was calm, but I noticed her hands were shaking just a little bit. "Just normal herbs," Mama Rose said with her sweet smile. "Things I've been using for years to help sick people." The doctor wrote something down. "We'll need a sample of those herbs to test them." "Of course," Mama Rose said, but I saw her swallow hard. Over the next few days, Grace got a little better in the hospital. The doctors gave her medicine to clean the bad things out of her body, but she was still very weak and slept most of the time. I spent every day at the hospital, sitting by her bed. Mama Rose would visit too, bringing flowers and kind words, but I started noticing things. When Mama Rose thought I wasn't looking, she would stare at Grace with cold eyes. When Grace woke up and saw Mama Rose, she would tense up like she was afraid. And when the doctors asked Mama Rose questions about Grace's sickness, her answers never quite made sense. On the fourth day, something happened that changed everything. I was alone with Grace when she suddenly grabbed my hand tight. "Joy," she whispered, her voice so weak I could barely hear her. "I need to tell you something important." "What is it?" I asked, leaning closer. She looked around the room to make sure we were alone. Then she said words that made my blood freeze. "Mama Rose is trying to kill me." I pulled my hand away. "Grace, you're sick. You're not thinking clearly." "No, Joy. Listen to me." Tears started running down her face. "The tea. It's not medicine. It's poison." "That's crazy," I said, but my voice was shaking. "Mama Rose loves us. She would never hurt you. Joy, there are things you don't know. Things about our family, about who you really are." Before she could say more, Mama Rose walked into the room, carrying a thermos and wearing her sweetest smile. "How are you feeling today, my dear Grace?" she asked, but I noticed she looked nervous. Grace immediately pretended to be asleep, but I saw her whole body go stiff with fear. "I brought you some soup," Mama Rose said, unscrewing the thermos cap. The smell filled the room. It smelled like the herbs she always used in her teas. "She's sleeping," I said quickly. "Maybe we should let her rest." Mama Rose's smile faltered for just a second. "Nonsense. She needs to eat to get better." She moved toward Grace's bed, but I stood up and blocked her way. "Mama, the doctors said she shouldn't eat anything right now, only what they give her through the tube." I was lying, but something inside me made me protect Grace. Mama Rose stared at me for a long moment. For the first time in my life, I saw anger in her eyes. Real anger. "Move, Joy," she said in a voice I had never heard before. It was cold and hard. "No," I said, my heart pounding. "Let her sleep." We stared at each other. In that moment, I saw something in Mama Rose's face that terrified me. She looked like a completely different person. Not the loving mother who had raised me, but someone else. Someone dangerous. Finally, she put the thermos away and smiled again. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, my dear. I just want what's best for Grace." After she left, I sat back down next to Grace's bed. My hands were shaking. "Grace," I whispered, "are you awake?" She opened her eyes and looked at me. I could see she was scared. "Did you hear what I said before?" she asked. I nodded. "Joy, I need you to do something for me. Tonight, when you go home, look in Mama Rose's room. Look for a wooden box under her bed. What's in it? Things that will show you the truth about everything." That night, I went home with my mind racing. Mama Rose acted normal, making dinner and asking about Grace's condition. But I kept watching her hands as she cooked, wondering if those same hands that had fed me and cared for me my whole life could really be capable of poisoning someone. After Mama Rose went to bed, I waited 2 hours to make sure she was deeply asleep. Then I crept into her room. My heart was beating so loud I was sure it would wake her up. I got down on my hands and knees and looked under her bed. There it was, a small wooden box pushed way back against the wall. I pulled it out carefully and took it to my room. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely open it. Inside, I found things that made no sense at first. There were old photographs. One showed a woman who looked exactly like me, but older. She was holding a baby, and written on the back in faded ink was, "Grace and baby Joy, 1999. Wait. Grace was holding a baby named Joy. But Grace was supposed to be my sister, not my. I found more pictures. The same woman, who looked like an older version of me, was in all of them, sometimes with the baby, sometimes alone. In one picture, she was standing next to a man in a hospital coat. On the back, someone had written, "Grace and Dr. Mike, 2001. Then I found papers, official-looking documents that made my head spin. A birth certificate for Joy Adebayo, born December 15, 1999. Mother, Grace Adebayo. Father, Michael Adebayo. But my name was Joy, and my last name was Adebayo. And the date was my birthday. With shaking hands, I found another birth certificate, this one for Grace Adebayo, born March 3, 1995. Mother, Ruth Adebayo. Father, unknown. I didn't understand. Who was Ruth Adebayo? And if Grace was born in 1995, that would make her 30 years old, not 28 like I always thought. At the bottom of the box, I found a letter. The paper was old and yellow, and some of the ink was smudged like someone had cried on it. It was written in handwriting I didn't recognize. My dearest Joy, if you are reading this, it means something has happened to me, and you have finally learned the truth. I am your mother. The woman you call Mama Rose is my sister, but she is not your mother. When you were born, I was very young and had no money. Your father, Dr. Michael, was killed in a car accident before you were born. I was alone and scared. Rose promised to help me take care of you. She said we could live with her and she would help me raise you. I was so grateful. But slowly, Rose started taking over. She began telling you to call her Mama. She made me pretend to be your big sister instead of your mother. She said it would be easier for everyone. I was too weak to fight her. I let her take my place in your life because I thought it was better for you. Rose had a job and money. I had nothing. But now I see the truth. Rose didn't want to help me. She wanted to steal you. She wanted to be your mother instead of me. I am getting sicker every day. Rose makes me tea and soup, but instead of getting better, I get worse. I think she is putting something in my food to make me sick. If something happens to me, please know that I love you more than anything in this world. You are my daughter, my heart, my everything. I'm sorry I let Rose take that away from us. Look for the truth. Don't let her lie to you anymore. Your real mother, Grace. The letter fell from my hands. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Grace wasn't my sister. Grace was my mother. And the woman I had been calling Mama my whole life was slowly poisoning my real mother. I sat on my bedroom floor, staring at the papers and pictures scattered around me. Everything I knew about my life was a lie. Every memory, every story, every moment of love I thought I shared with Mama Rose was built on the biggest lie imaginable. She had stolen me from my real mother. And now she was killing my real mother to keep the secret safe. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made me freeze. Quickly, I shoved everything back in the box and pushed it under my bed. The footsteps stopped outside my door. Joy? Mama Rose's voice called softly. Are you awake, dear? I pretended to be asleep, but my heart was pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it through the door. After a few minutes, the footsteps went away. But I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I looked at Mama Rose across the breakfast table, and she looked like a complete stranger to me. This woman who had tucked me into bed, who had sung me lullabies, who had kissed my scraped knees. She was a liar and a thief and a killer. You look tired, my dear, she said in her sweet voice. Did you sleep well? Yes, Mama. I lied, just like she had been lying to me my whole life. Good. I made your favorite breakfast. She put a plate in front of me with a warm smile. I stared at the food, wondering if this was how Grace felt every time Mama Rose gave her something to eat or drink. Wondering if it was safe, wondering if the woman who raised me was capable of poisoning me too. I need to go to the hospital early today, I said, pushing the plate away. I'm not very hungry. Something flashed in Mama Rose's eyes, but she kept smiling. Of course, dear. Give Grace my love. As I walked to the hospital, my mind was spinning with questions. How long had Grace known the truth? Why didn't she tell me sooner? How long had Mama Rose been poisoning her? And what was I supposed to do now? When I got to Grace's room, she was awake and looked a little stronger than the day before. Joy, she said when she saw me, did you find the box? I nodded and sat down next to her bed. Grace, Mama, I know it's confusing, she said softly. I'm your mother, Joy. I gave birth to you. I held you first. I named you. I loved you first. Tears started running down my face. Why didn't you tell me? Rose threatened me. She said if I ever told you the truth, she would make sure I never saw you again. She said she would tell people I was an unfit mother and have you taken away from me completely. But you're my mother, I sobbed. You had the right to tell me. I was young and scared, Joy. When your father died, I had nothing. No job, no money, no family except Rose. When she offered to help, I thought it was a blessing. I didn't realize she was planning to take you away from me. How did she do it? How did she make me think she was my mother? Grace closed her eyes like the memory hurt. It started slowly. At first, she just helped with everything. Feeding you, changing you, playing with you. But then she started calling herself Mama when she talked to you. She told me it would confuse you to have two mothers, so I should just be your big sister for now. And you agreed? I was 17 years old, Joy. I was tired and overwhelmed and grateful for help. I thought it was temporary. I thought when I got older and stronger, I would tell you the truth and take my place as your real mother. What changed? Rose changed. The longer she played the role of your mother, the more she believed it was real. She started getting angry when I tried to be motherly with you. She would say things like, I'm handling this, or Joy doesn't need to be confused by too many people telling her what to do. I felt sick. So she just stole me? By the time you were old enough to understand, you already called her Mama and came to her when you were hurt or scared. Rose made sure I was always too busy or too tired to be the one to comfort you. She became your mother in every way that mattered, and I became just. Grace, your older sister. Why didn't you fight harder? Grace started crying. I tried, Joy. When you were about 5 years old, I decided to tell you the truth. But the night before I planned to do it, I got very sick. Rose took care of me, gave me medicine, nursed me back to health. But I realize now that she made me sick on purpose, to show me what would happen if I tried to take you back. My blood went cold. She's been poisoning you for years? Not constantly. Just whenever I got too close to you, or whenever I seemed like I might tell you the truth. She would make me just sick enough to remind me who was really in control. I thought about all the times over the years when Grace had gotten mysteriously ill, times when she seemed to be getting closer to me, acting more like a mother than a sister. And then she would get sick, and Mama Rose would take care of her, and everything would go back to normal. Grace, Mom. The word felt strange in my mouth, but also right. What do we do now? Before she could answer, we heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Mama Rose's voice was talking to someone, probably a nurse. Grace grabbed my hand tight. Joy, listen to me carefully. She can't know that you know the truth. If she realizes you found out, she'll do something desperate. She's already tried to kill me. If she thinks she's about to lose you forever, there's no telling what she might do. But I can't just pretend everything is normal, I whispered. You have to, until we figure out how to get proof of what she's done. The doctors are already testing my blood for poison. When they find it, we can go to the police. Mama Rose appeared in the doorway, carrying flowers and wearing her sweetest smile. Good morning, my dears, she said. Grace, you look much better today. I watched Grace's face carefully. The fear was still there, but she hid it well. Thank you, Mama Rose, Grace said. The doctors are taking good care of me. I'm so glad. Mama Rose put the flowers in a vase and then pulled out another thermos. I brought you some fresh soup, the same recipe that always made you feel better when you were little. My heart started racing. Grace looked at me, and I could see the panic in her eyes. Actually, I said quickly, Grace just finished eating breakfast. The nurses said she shouldn't eat too much at once while her stomach is still sensitive. Mama Rose's smile tightened. Nonsense, Joy. I've been taking care of Grace since she was born. I know what's best for her. She moved toward Grace's bed with the soup, but I stood up and blocked her way again. Mama, please, let's just wait a little while. This time, Mama Rose didn't hide her anger. Her sweet mask slipped completely. Joy, sit down and stop interfering, she said in a voice so cold it made me shiver. Grace needs to eat this soup. No, I said, my voice shaking but determined. She doesn't. Mama Rose stared at me for a long moment. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out what was happening. Joy, she said slowly, what's gotten into you? You're acting very strange. I'm just worried about Grace, I said. I want her to get better. So do I, dear. That's why I made this special soup. Now please move out of the way. No. The word hung in the air between us. For 23 years, I had never said no to the woman I thought was my mother. I had always been the obedient daughter, trusting and grateful and loving. But now I was protecting my real mother from the woman who had stolen my life. Mama Rose's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, calculation, and finally something that looked almost like fear. I see, she said quietly. You know, the word sent ice through my veins. Grace squeezed my hand tighter. Know what? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. But Mama Rose was done pretending. Her sweet smile was completely gone now, replaced by something cold and calculating. You found the box, she said. I should have destroyed those things years ago. Grace tried to sit up in her hospital bed. Rose, please. Shut up, Grace, Mama Rose snapped. You've caused enough trouble. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was not the woman who had raised me. This was someone else entirely. Someone cruel and dangerous. 23 years, Mama Rose continued, her voice getting harder with each word. 23 years, I gave that girl everything. I fed her, clothed her, loved her, raised her as my own. And this is how I'm repaid, with suspicion and betrayal? You stole me, I said, finding my voice. You stole me from my real mother. Mama Rose laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Stole you? I saved you. Grace was 17 years old with no money, no job, no future. You would have ended up in foster care. Or worse. I gave you a good life. You poisoned my mother. I did what I had to do to protect our family, she said coldly. Grace kept threatening to tell you the truth. She kept trying to turn you against me. I couldn't let that happen. Because you knew it was wrong, Grace said weakly from the bed. You knew you had no right to take my daughter from me, right? Mama Rose's voice rose. I'll tell you what's right. I'm the one who got up with Joy every night when she was sick. I'm the one who taught her to walk and talk and read. I'm the one who worked every day to put food on the table and clothes on her back. I'm the one who earned the right to be called Mama. By lying and stealing and poisoning people? I asked. Mama Rose turned to look at me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been pain in her eyes. I loved you, Joy. I love you still. Everything I did was to keep our family together. Our family was built on lies. All families have secrets, she said. The only difference is that ours are coming out. She moved toward the door, still holding the thermos of soup. Where are you going? I asked. She paused and looked back at us. When she smiled this time, it was the most frightening thing I had ever seen. I'm going to fix this mess once and for all. And then she was gone, leaving Grace and me alone with the terrible truth and an even more terrible fear about what she might do next.